Hello again, welcome back everyone. LiquorHound here with you. Thank you for joining me for another Spirit review video. And today we'll be taking a look at Compass Box's latest release, This Is Not a Luxury Whiskey. Now that's not what I'm saying about it. I'm telling you that's the actual title of the bottle, if you can read this handwritten label. Now the crazy thing about this whole packaging was the reason for it. So they were trying to do their interpretation, John Glaser and Compass Box were trying to do their interpretation of what Rene Marguerite did in 1929 with his painting, This Is Not a Pipe. Now, in that painting, you actually see a picture of a smoking pipe, and underneath it, in French, it says, This is not a pipe. I don't speak French, so I'm not going to do that to you. But anyway, so it kind of challenged your perception of, is what you see what it is? And that's kind of what he was doing with this packaging. And the reason was because when you see what's coming out now and all these high-end single malts that are maybe doing really over-the-top packaging or, you know, something like that, does that make it a luxury? Does that make it high-end? Does that make it quality? And that's what he's showing you here. Simplistic packaging, quality contents. Now, as far as the actual whiskeys that went inside this blended scotch were 79%, and by the way, he had originally put this on his website. You know, he was forced to take it down and got in trouble over it because you're not allowed to talk about every whiskey that goes into a blend. You can only talk about the youngest whiskey that's in it, and the youngest whiskey that's in it is 19-year-old Glen Ord that was aged in first fill sherry. So 79% of this is that. Then beyond that, 10.1% is a 40-year-old Strathclyde single grain whiskey. 6.9% is another 40-year-old single grain by Girvan. And then finally, a little 4% of 30-year-old Caol Ila. Now, the Strathclyde, the Girvan, and the Caol Ila are all ex-bourbon barrel matured, so no sherry there. The only sherried influence you get is that 79% of that 19-year-old first fill Glen Ord, okay? Now we know the exact contents. As far as proof, 53.1% ABV, 106.2 proof, 4,992 bottles released, retail pricing right around $200. But, again, look at what's in this whiskey. Alright, so let's go ahead and get to the nose and we'll see what we think about it. Now, I can tell you, I've been doing my research with my whiskey friends. As you can tell, this bottle level is way down here. And the reason for that, real quick, is because lately I've been trying to find, you know, when a whiskey, what happens to a whiskey when it oxidizes. So sometimes whiskeys get better when they oxidize, sometimes they get worse. So what I do is when I have multiple bottles, like I have a couple of these, I'll actually open the first one. I won't gas it because I want to see how it's going to change. And about once a week I'll revisit it and I'll see how it's changing, how it's oxidizing. Is it getting better? Now the second I find it takes a turn and starts going backwards, I start gassing that bottle, and I know that's the length of time for that bottle. But just like I found out in the Octomore 6.3 with the help of my friend Mark, we noticed that, wow, this whiskey catches its stride after about 2 months of being oxidized. So that's what we're doing here with this one. This one's been open for about 2 months as well, and I've noticed no decline in quality. Matter of fact, it's really opening up beautifully. Everybody that I pour this for seems to love it. So let's go ahead and get to the nose. The one thing I always get right away is fruit cocktail. Fruit cocktail like you usually get in the can, maybe light syrup, so it's not too sweet, it's not too syrupy. But fruit cocktail on the nose, that's the sherried influence. There's dates, raisins, a little fig element to it as well. Cinnamon, clove, pipe tobacco. Oddly enough, it's pipe tobacco in here as well. That's that old whiskey character coming through. There's also a little bit of a grassy element, slightly grassy to it. But overall, really, really nice. Maybe even a little bit of banana as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and get to the taste. Again, I have not added any water to this. Always judge that second one. Viscosity, medium, actually a little above medium, heading towards the really oily stuff. Whoa. Changes gears, and mid palate really kicks in. Okay, so right up front, and it's still transitioning. Right up front, the thing that I noticed immediately is, again, just like you got on the nose, that fruit cocktail follows through on the palate. Oh, can't judge it yet because now I'm already on the back end, and it's changed so much from the intro. Okay. Fruit cocktail. Fruit cocktail, caramel, a little bit of bananas. Right here, old leather, pipe tobacco coming in. Cinnamon is right there on that mid palate. Clove as well. Now we get into a little bit of old leather. Wow. Raisins, but feel more like golden raisins. Almost like a little hint of like a grappa aspect on the back end too. Almost like you're tasting grapes. Not the alcohol. It doesn't have bite like, over high ABV or an over strong whiskey. It's not like that. Honey, that hay that I got on the nose is also in there as well, but it's so, the honey and the hay grass aspect to it is so well enveloped in everything else. The sherry isn't a sherry bomb. It's more like it's a delicate whiskey with bold effects. So you have the delicacy of the fruit cocktail up front with a little bit of honey and a little bit of grass underneath, and then you get on the mid palate when that cinnamon and clove comes in and it kind of swells just a little bit and you get that boldness coming through, but the fruits are still up on top. They're not getting covered up. They're actually still riding right up on top. And then you get the old feel, the old whiskey feel of that 40-year-old Strathclyde, where you get the bourbonish qualities of like a caramel. You also get those, I guess maybe that's where those figs or that raisin aspect is kind of coming from them as well. There's also, let me try that again, make sure that's exactly what that was. Yeah, a little bit of banana in there as well. A little bit of, that's kind of like that ex-bourbon barrel. You'll get bananas sometimes in some really nice bourbons. Little bit, just a hint of dried coconut in here. That's Strathclyde. That usually does that. Maybe the Girvan is adding in as well. Okay, so then when you transition, you start getting on that back end after the spice swell. Then you get that old leather. The pipe tobacco starts transitioning, and you start getting the Caol Ila effect. So you're starting to get that sweet peat type aspect on the finish, lingering finish. That's, these are old whiskeys. They tend to do that for a long time. That's why I kind of don't understand when I heard a few people mention that, they thought the finish on it was rather short. Man, not my bottle. This bottle has a very, very long finish. I would call it medium to long, all right? So it's way up there. Now, the one thing I have noticed is that it likes water, so we have a little Scottish water here to drop in. We'll do 3, yeah, we'll go to 4. It actually enjoys water. It doesn't break, Now, they always talk about cracking the whiskey with water, but that's just releasing the molecules, letting all the aspects out of the glass. But when a whiskey breaks, it's kind of when you add too much water and it kind of starts falling apart. This whiskey will break, but it takes a lot of water. Okay. Yes, honey right up front, fruit cocktail coming out of the glass. The grass is a little more muted now. The cinnamon is also a little more muted, but it's all still there. Cinnamon and clove is still here. Pipe tobacco, not as noticeable on the nose. There's more red fruits popping though, a little more of that sherry aspect beyond just the fruit cocktail. Okay. Still viscous, still very creamy on the palate. Matter of fact, it goes down even easier. Fruit's still right up front. A lot of times when you add water, you'll get too much oak right up front. The oak is what usually pops first, and you have to wait 5 minutes or so for the oak to die down till you can really enjoy the dram. But here, what you're getting is when you add the water, the oak doesn't necessarily pop more. It actually just mutes the spices. It kind of makes everybody, hey, calm down, get a little more creamy. I will say, I think the finish, when you add water, I think the finish may shorten just a little bit. Now I'm thinking it's more like a medium finish with the water. But I say that, and at the same time I'm thinking, and I'm tasting how there's that old oak still just running throughout. Plums, figs. Yeah. But it does make the first, 2/3 of this experience wonderful when you add water. It sweetens it up a little bit more. Wow, wonderful stuff. So again, 4,992 bottles of it out there. If you find it, I recommend picking it up. I think it's wonderful whiskey. You just have to take it, you have to accept the fact that this isn't single malt. This is a blended Scotch. But in a lot of cases, especially with Compass Box, they know how to blend malts, and they're using old whiskeys in here, so they're being able to manipulate and make it what they want. And I think this is fantastic stuff. Oh, it's still good. So anyway, I hope everybody enjoyed it. Everybody have a great evening, and cheers.